There's a moment that happens to almost everyone now. You walk into the grocery store, not with fear, not with dread, just a simple plan. A list of 5 things: bread, eggs, fruit, chicken, and maybe a snack if life has been kind. You walk the aisles like you've done thousands of times before. Nothing looks different. Nothing is sparkling gold or wrapped in velvet. But when you reach the checkout, the total pops up, and there's this strange pause, a gap between what you expected and what the world just handed you. Groceries cost more than they should, more than they ever did, more than the math in your head prepared you for. And today's story is about why. Not your surface level answers, the real ones, the hidden mechanics, the boss level systems quietly shaping every price on the shelf. To understand why food costs feel like buying epic loot, we have to go back to the moment the world broke. The global shutdown. Factories closed, shipping stalled, farms were struggling, labor vanished, and demand shifted overnight. And the supply chain, the invisible network moving food from seed to store, cracked all at once. Some of those cracks are still there. When supply falls and demand rises, prices climb. And this isn't greed, it's unfortunately just economics 101. But the story doesn't stop there, because after the crisis ended, prices didn't fall back down. They stayed. And then they climbed higher, which leads us to the next chapter. And that is, most people don't realize how many hidden layers exist between the farm and your fork. Every layer got more expensive. The fuel to run tractors and trucks, fertilizer up over 80% in some periods, animal feed spiking due to global shortages, packaging materials like plastics and cardboards, cold storage and electricity all jumped. Labor shortages across farms, factories, and transport. When the cost to produce food rises, the final price reflects every step of that chain. If WoW mobs dropped fewer materials and crafting costs doubled, you'd expect the auction house to shift too. That's what happened in real life, except you can't grind boars to fix it. Here's a plot twist most people don't know. A handful of giant corporations control most of the grocery industry. In meat processing, just 4 companies control nearly 80% of the entire market. In retail groceries, a few chains dominate entire regions. When competition shrinks, prices don't just reflect the costs, they reflect power. If one company raises prices, others follow. Not because they must, but simply because they can. That's why so many items jumped at the same time, with the same excuse: supply issues. When a market becomes that concentrated, consumers lose bargaining power. The middle class pays the difference. Shrinkflation is like a sneaky mini boss, and you've met this one. The cereal box is the same size, but somehow half full. The chips look normal, but contain 7 chips and a dream. The candy bar didn't get more expensive, it just got smaller. Again. This is shrinkflation, and it exists because companies know consumers will notice price increases, but not always size reductions. It's the economic equivalent of a stealth debuff. Your gold buys less even though the interface hasn't changed, and companies are brazen about it, reducing products by 10 to 30% with identical packaging. Same cost, less food. That difference is pure profit to the company. Behind every loaf of bread and every carton of eggs is a web of global pressures. Droughts, floods, war, trade disruptions, bird flu wiping out millions of chickens, climate instability affecting harvest cycles. Food is fragile. It depends on weather, stability, and predictability. We don't control much of that. When global shocks hit, they ripple straight into your grocery bill. A world in turmoil becomes a store in turmoil. Now we get to the shadowy part of the dungeon, the room many companies hoped we wouldn't look into. During the worst inflation spikes, corporate profits in the food industries hit record highs. Some companies publicly admitted they raised prices more than necessary simply because consumers already expected increases. In other words, we increased prices because we could. Not every company did this, but enough did to move the entire market. And once a higher price becomes the norm, it rarely goes back down. There's no reverse inflation spell. No vendor that says, you know what, let's lower prices. The system has no incentive to reset. All of this would just be economics if it didn't land on real people. Families buying less, parents skipping meals for their kids, single adults budgeting like field generals. Young people joking about eating ramen, except it's not a joke anymore. Elders choosing between medicine and groceries. The stress of grocery shopping, something that should be small, ordinary, and forgettable, becomes a monthly reminder that the world is heavier than it used to be. Food shouldn't feel like a luxury. Survival shouldn't feel like a financial test. Yet, here we are. But the story doesn't need to end in despair. There are bright spots on the map. Local food co-ops growing rapidly. Farmers market expanding access. Policy movements aimed at food affordability. And younger generations pushing for systematic change. And historically speaking, every period of runaway food costs eventually breaks under its own pressure, and reforms follow. Nothing stays impossible forever. Even the toughest dungeons get nerfed. If grocery shopping feels stressful, if your total makes your stomach drop, if you keep asking, how is this normal? It isn't personal. You're living inside a story reshaped by global shocks, corporate decisions, and broken incentives. Your struggle isn't incompetence. It's experience points earned in a world that became more expensive than it should have been. And your awareness, your refusal to accept that's just the way it is the beginning of a change. Because the more we understand the map, the easier it becomes to find the exits. Remember, stay hopeful, stay curious, and may your next trip to the grocery store be kinder than the last.